to some of its landmark contributions by adopting this lens rooted in dialectics and looking at it in theory building. The goal of this is to tease out choices that Jim and others have made in managing some of the key dialectics in this text conversation approach, and to use these choice points to highlight kind of the robustness and nature of the theory, areas for future development, ways to extend it, and so forth. So this presentation kind of begins with a discussion of dialectics and tensions among opposites as a metaphor or lens for beginning to look at this. It then provides an overview of the key tenets in Montreal School in an effort to tease out the sources of theory building. It also draws from paradoxes of theory building and the work that's gone on with that to begin to look at unpacking, extending, and refining this theory. What I want to do maybe a little bit at the end is to say I've learned in a reflexive way about some things I would say to change dialectical notions of theory building through some of this enterprise. So let's go into the notion, first of all, of dialectics as a lens. Dialectics as a lens is a broad-based metaphor that refers to looking at opposites and how people manage opposites in examining relationships, and particularly with Taylor and colleagues, this has been with communication and organization. Dialectics handles the struggles and trying to hold together those tensions, trying to come up with the both and of those polar opposites. As a perspective for looking at organizational communication, it also focuses on the dynamic interactions of the push-pulls between those opposing forces. And it also looks at the way in which those incompatibility and tensions bring forth different kinds of contradictions that might arise. This kind of work has been applied in a lot of empirical studies in organizational communication, particularly looking at primary, secondary contradictions and dialectics of control, and the way that organizational participation programs enact paradoxes, such as becoming empowered by giving up individual rights, and having the top of the organization order the bottom of the organization to participate. So researchers have really utilized this kind of lens to look at the continual interplay of these interdependent forces, such as autonomy and connectedness, and solidarity and division, and emancipation and control. So there are a variety of ways that scholars have actually utilized this notion of dialectics in their research. Now, only a few of the Montreal School scholars have actually made this the focal point of their investigation. There's one particular chapter that's in the 2006 book that focuses on inclusion and exclusion and really looks at this as a process of integration and differentiation, as a way of analyzing some of the discourse on leadership succession in Mr. Sam. But I'm going to argue dialectical thinking is at the foundation of this theory building, and that it surfaces in a number of different ways. There are many dialectics, and I'm only going to focus on some of those. I see it as a form of genuine thinking, and that Taylor et al. Bring together two heads, different directions through these tensions, and that these tensions provide a way that language is the seed of these oppositions. And that material and social worlds spiral back and forth with the seeds of these oppositions. So I argue that Taylor and colleagues use these conceptual tensions among opposites to build theory, contrapose antithetical views, and transcend incompatibilities in the notion of what is an organization. To begin this analysis, I provide a brief and simplistic overview, clearly translated by Putnam and appropriated, of the general constructs and tenets of text conversation. Even though it's almost ludicrous to boil down this into a nutshell, and I am a nut for trying to do it, no nut's big enough to handle the complexity of this and house it. But I feel like I really can't do this kind of analysis without giving a kind of nutshell about what's in this and unpacking the role to move forward to dialectical thinking. So what I'm going to be doing in this is I'm going to be looking at essentially the kind of nature of the key or the major elements. I do want to mention here, Bob McPhee calls this the spaghetti bowl, because he says anytime you pull something else out, something else comes out, you put something else back in, and it's so intertwined. So please accept the fact I believe it's intertwined, but I'm trying to distill a little of this. So those of you who are very familiar with this, this will be a quick rundown, as they say. As most of us know, Taylor et al. Treat conversation as interactive, situated events in which organizing occurs. Conversation is the site of organizing. Through co-orientation, which I think parallels what Harry talked about as action this morning, in which humans and non-humans form a relationship as they orient around something to be done and how to do it. That's kind of the triad unit of communication that's in here. The recursivity of language through grammar, syntax, speech acts, text, opposition, I will put in here, conveys the attitudes and orientations of the actors and implicates them in substantive, instrumental, in Harry's term, and relational aspects of these messages. Text reflect what was said and provide a private or a public record of past conversations. Thus, conversations move through time and space in the form of these texts. Written and oral texts become abstracted, removed from those situated interactions, become the basis for future interactions. Texts then mediate back on conversations through reflexively conveying orientations and attitudes from previous exchanges. This is often called modality. And they become the subject of future conversations. As tacit understandings from the past become explicit in the future, actants create a metatext in which the previous relation of the speaker to the spoken becomes the focal point of a new conversation, or the usness. From this usness of the relationship, a macro actor emerges. This is a spokesperson, and the spokesperson becomes the representative, in Harry's kind of model of this, of a collective voice for us. The macro actor translates what other actors want, references other actors, speaks for the silent and the absent, redirects individual sense-making into a larger collective. In this narrative, though, distinctions emerge. And new rules, new contracts, new practices, as Harry would call, are often coming through this. And through referencing others who are often removed from those interactions and putting them in the collective narratives, the spokesperson reconstructs the entity as an organization, and that becomes the source for future conversations. The translation of the past from the part to the whole becomes, in any way, a meta-conversation, which is the entity, in which the local kinds of conversations become the subject for the global. The successive embedding of one of these conversations on another, one of these texts on another, creates a new kind of collective that reframes and brings forth closure to the previous one. I see the meta-conversation here is loosely coupled